I'd like to call to order the March 2nd meeting of the Sonora City Council. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Mayor Garaventa,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Here.
Councilmember Plummer,
Here.
Councilmember Such, here, Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Item B is City Clerk's report on the agenda posting.
The agenda was posted Friday, February 28th at 8:30 a.m.
Item C is approval of the agenda. Is there any additions, subtractions, corrections? Seeing none. I will move on to item D, Employee of the Year recognition, and we're going to do that by department. And I think I will go ahead and ask Chief Vanderweel to come forward and we'll start with the police department.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council. No action required on this item. We'd like to recognize our employees of the year. Each year, we get together and recognize exceptional performance of our employees in 5 different categories. Tonight's recipients will be receiving certificates. However, later in the year, in October, we'll have our departmental award ceremony, so at that point, they'll receive plaques and uniform ribbons for this recognition. So I'll start with our Employee of the Year, Officer Eric Weber. Please step forward. So whenever possible, when I read the nominations, I included the actual wordage that was presented to me from the peers. So this is a peer-nominated recognition process for us. The supervisors will review and concur and support. But it coming from the peers, I think, in my opinion, makes it that much more valuable to receive this recognition. So Eric was nominated because he works more than his fair share of shifts and is a pleasure to work with. He sets an excellent example for our community and works well with the public. He's a great mentor to the newer officers and trainees, and he is one of the most reliable employees in a department, which I would add is very, very helpful when we're short-staffed. He's always there. He'll come in. He's reliable and consistent. So we really appreciate that. His peers appreciate that as well. He maintains a positive attitude. He's always there to help out at the firing range, being our department range master. He helps out on patrol and calls for service. Again, this was his peers saying that he's helping them out in various aspects of his job. One of his peers summed it up by saying, he's just a good quality dude. And I included that because it's, again, from the mouths of his peers, and I thought it fit because he is a quality guy. I've known him for a few years, had the pleasure of knowing him for a few years, and I'm glad to have him with the department. His supervisors note that he is developing well as a field training officer, one of his other jobs, and a junior leader of the department. He's even-keeled and consistently reliable. What more can you ask for, right? So with that, Eric, I present you with this certificate of 2019 Officer of the Year. So our Officer of the Year, he left. But I wanted to note that he'll be recognized by the American Legion Post 58 during Law and Order Night, and that'll be on March 17th. So they'll be recognizing him during that dinner. All right, our next category is Reserve Officer of the Year, and it goes to Danny Duffy. He could not make it tonight. He had a conflict with his scheduling. Even though he's a retired guy, he still is very busy, very active, and has things to do. But I would like to say a few words about him publicly, if I may. So he's been with us since the latter part of 2018, and has quickly caught the attention of his peer group. They collectively note that he is fun to work with and eager to learn. He dedicates quite a bit of time to help out on patrol and is always smiling. And I get that from the community as well. That guy's always smiling. He is known for his excellent team attitude, and he is always present for special events and details. He's one of a kind. His work ethic is inspiring to SPD staff members, and he supports his fellow patrol officers. The leadership of the department recognizes that with his extensive military and law enforcement backgrounds, he provides a higher than average level of safety and security as a backup officer to his fellow officers. It is also noted that Danny commutes well over an hour just to serve our community, which is especially impressive to me. So, Danny, if you're watching, thank you. So our next recognition is Civilian Employee of the Year, and that's going to be Cynthia Nordvik. Cindy, are you here? Come on up. So everybody in my department is highly important to our operation, but there's about 3 that I say I couldn't live without, and that if one of us didn't show up, in the morning for one reason or other, would cause the most breakdown and devastation to our department. If her and a couple others, I'm not one of them, by the way, because I can be replaced, but Cindy definitely is. So she's a part-time police dispatcher and has the added collateral duty as a department IT specialist. A common sentiment about Cindy is that she goes above and beyond her regular assigned IT duties, as well as dispatch duties. She is always willing to help whenever asked and makes herself available to cover dispatch shifts at a moment's notice. Now, she lives out of town. And what's your commute, 35, 40 minutes? Sometimes I've threatened to give her a speeding ticket, just how fast she responds when we call, but she's always there. She always has her hands full with IT work. One peer noted that she rocks at it. Quote, rocks. So, you rock, Cindy. And another saying, she can do it all. Cindy has worked many late hours fixing IT issues, and at times remoting in from home in the middle of the night, or even connecting from another state while she's on vacation. She just recently did this, as a matter of fact. The department's leadership commented that Cindy goes the extra mile and works hard to ensure our backup systems are functioning correctly during power shutoffs and other service interruptions. As an example, one supervisor recalled the many trips she made up to the repeater tower with a can of fuel in her hand and a flashlight to keep our radio systems running during the PSPs. So thank you, Cindy, for your hard work. We couldn't do it without you. Literally could not do it without you. You're a big reason of our, a big element of our success at the police department. So thank you for everything you do. All right. Next recognition is our Community Service Volunteer of the Year. This is called the Marshall McMaster Community Service Volunteer of the Year Award. Aaron Moran, are you here? Aaron's always looking sharp, keeps me on my toes. So Aaron has been with the Community Service Volunteer Unit since 2017 and has volunteered over 500 hours this past year. He is known around the department as one of the most active volunteers we have. He is willing to do any task without complaining and does a great job providing support on calls where a sworn officer's presence is not necessarily needed. So what our community service volunteers do, they're adult volunteers. They supplement patrol. They're an extra set of eyes out there for us. They can take cold calls, cold thefts, help out on traffic collisions. They're really a great asset to our department. And Aaron is one of those that is always there, and he does that extra work. He does the work that we need. So there's work that we need, and there's work that's kind of fun to do. Aaron's always there when we need him. He has a positive attitude and takes an active interest in the community. You'll see him at all our community events. You know, if you're out there during National Night Out, or I think we took a polar plunge together. So that wasn't a dream. That was real. That was a real thing. Okay, so we did that together. So he's always there to support the community and the department and represent the department in that function. He helps out and mentors on Explorer details, and he always takes an effort to represent the department. The police department's leadership commented that Aaron stands out by regularly being available for all details, where he's needed the most. He's there when we need him, is a comment made. So I couldn't agree more. I think you're very deserving of this recognition. Your peers are right on by bringing that up. So thank you for your dedication. Thank you for volunteerism. It doesn't happen as much as it should, especially as the generations change. We don't see as much volunteerism, and our volunteers help us run the way we are, supplement us in many ways, and very much appreciated. Aaron, congratulations and thank you. Last but definitely not least is our Ronald Billings II Explorer of the Year recipient, Catherine Campbell. Catherine, come on out. So Catherine is one of our junior volunteers. She's an explorer. When the nominations came in, she took this category by landslide. I mean, we have a lot of great explorers, and we appreciate them all, but almost unanimously, the department voted for her. So that was impressive. She has been with the post, Explorer Post, since March of 2018. She volunteered over 300 hours last year. And for someone with school and a lot of other things going on, of someone her age, that's very impressive. I don't know that I could have done that much volunteering. I did not do that much volunteering at her age. But even if I tried, I don't think I could have pulled that off. So that's impressive. She's regarded the most involved police explorer we have. She attends nearly every detail, arriving early and staying till everything's complete. And that is 100% correct. She's helped out for National Night Out, different functions we have. I know I'm going to see her face at the very beginning of the project, and I know she's going to be there wrapping it up, putting things away at the end. She can be counted on time and time and again to respond to last-minute call-outs. She has taken an active role in recruiting for the explorers, which is very much appreciated. And again, it's hard to find young volunteers these days, and she's helping out with that. She finds ways to make the post better. Police department staff also commented that she is the most dedicated and active explorer. She's always eager to learn tasks and takes the program seriously. She is not afraid to jump in and help. The department's leadership appreciates her positive attitude, hard work, and acknowledges the commitment she has to the department and the volunteer program. So, Catherine, I wholeheartedly support that nomination. Thank you so much for your volunteerism, your hard work, and your dedication to us. Congratulations. And that is my last category, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Um, Chiefs, I don't think, the other chief's not back yet, so I think we're going to go ahead to... Oh, she's here? Oh, is she? Okay. Come on.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the fire department, no action required. I'm Lisa Hoffman. I'm the assistant to the chief for the fire department, and I'm here tonight to recognize the chief on behalf of the department for her great service to the department and to the city. This is kind of a unique prospect when they do the nominations. It's peer-driven, but you're peerless. So it's pretty unusual for a group of individuals who work for an employer to nominate that employer for Employee of the Year. Chief New stands out in this category because she's, well, frankly, fabulous. But I wanted to read a few of the comments from the actual peers who nominated the chief. One of the nominations stated that Chief New, they wanted to thank her for her incredible performance. She was able to get the AFG Fire Grant, the USDA Command Vehicle Grant, the OTS Extrication Equipment Grant, and the VFA Safety Equipment Grant. And I believe we haven't gotten a grant in City of Sonora for the fire department since 1972.
No, for the engine was like 2002, I think.
2002, well, some of you weren't born yet. Anyway, it's pretty astonishing the amount of work that she put into getting these grants. She was just amazing. She was very driven. She made sure that the city is going to get what it needs to keep going and to keep the fire department active and involved in the community. Another person wrote that she has worked hard to receive the AFG grant and to get our department and the city a new fire engine. Another stated, "I strive to be a leader like Chief New someday." And they quoted, "Thanks for being one of my mentors." Again, another wrote, "Well-deserved for everything you do for the community and for the department. Chief New is a spectacular chief. I think she does a fabulous job. It's just amazing. And of course, I love having a female chief." So I'm very proud and honored to recognize the chief and to call her up to give her this award for Employee of the Year. Congratulations, and very well-deserved.
I don't know if I can, you got me all choked up, but I just wanted to say thank you to all of the members of the fire department and for the city for having this available to us to be recognized. All of them work very hard every day, so I'd be remiss if I didn't say how much I appreciate their work they put in. All the hours it takes to write those grants, they're right there beside me doing the research and helping me out with any information to get them. So I'll serve you proud. I'm very honored, very humbled, and thank you again very much.
Okay, now for the Employees Association Employee of the Year, our City Administrator.
So Chris Gorski and myself are going to present the award for the Sonora Employees Association Employee of the Year. And this is our inaugural year for our employees of this category. And since I'm new, recently new, I thought Chris would give a little bit of brief detail about our Employee of the Year, Tracy Skelly.
Hi, I'm usually pretty short, but what I will say is Tracy is a very dedicated employee. She works every day very hard. She has her department wiretight, and as a new person that came into the city, I haven't done public accounting in a while, she was extremely helpful in making sure that I was able to fit and able to learn what I needed to learn. And so I want to thank her for that, but I also would like to give you this plaque.
Okay. So item E then is public comment on non-agenda items. The public may address the council on any item of the public interest not otherwise on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of the city. No action may be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to city staff or placed on a subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation. Mr. Hildreth, looks like you're
Thank you
ready
very
to go.
much, council members. Jim Hildreth and my daughter Hermione. And I remember council member Connie came to her adoption, which was about 2 years ago. So she's growing. Tomorrow she turns 8 years of age. So it's been going very well. One of the things that I wanted to address is I wanted to thank the council and the staff for lighting up the crosswalks. I daily go up Greenlee Road about 10:30 at night, and I noticed immediately the dots that were put out, the lighting, in addition to that, the painting, much safer, et cetera, et cetera. And if it could be extended throughout the city, and especially in our vulnerable areas, I just applaud you. I thought staff did an excellent job, and I wanted to compliment them in front of you. The second item in my routine is I take this little one to school every morning about 8 o'clock, Monday through Friday. I pick her up at 2. I also pick up my wife off the Greenlee Basin at 10:30. And I've been shocked by the amount of red light runners that I've been seeing in the city of Sonora. And it's blatant. And I know our law enforcement does an excellent job from a standpoint of pulling over individuals, et cetera. But I'm talking clear, not the old California stop or whatever, but I mean just total. And it's going from the city into the county, downtown Sonora, Stockton Road, Washington Street, et cetera. And so again, I just wanted to alert, and in particular on the public safety side, is that it's something that needs to be enforced. And again, I applaud our law enforcement for doing the good job that they do. So again, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak on public comment? Seeing none, we'll move over to the consent calendar. Consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be voted on in one motion unless a council member or member of the public has a question or wishes to discuss an item. In that case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. There is one item. It's the approval of disbursements in the amount of $143,421.94 for payroll inclusive of employee salaries, employer and employee taxes, and retirement contributions, and miscellaneous voluntary employee deductions. Is there any, does anyone want to pull that item? Seeing none, I'll ask if there's any public comment on the consent calendar. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins and seconded by Councilmember Plummer. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes unanimously. Item G is unfinished business. There is none. Item H is public hearings. There are none. Item I, there is new business, and there are 4 items. And the first item is approve and authorize the mayor to sign a letter to the State Water Resources Control Board in support of Tuolumne Utilities District's Spring Gap Draft Pinecrest Lake Level Amendment. Ms. Rudkin.
Mr. Mayor, council members, the item before you is a request of the Tuolumne Utilities District and 2 of your fellow council members. The letter that is presented before you will show support of the amendments made on behalf of TUD addressing the draft Pinecrest Lake Level Amendment. And we do have representatives here from TUD if there are any questions in regards to the letter and the draft amendment.
Okay. Is there any questions for staff? Well, you want to... I was going to have them come up on public, and maybe you can ask at that point. So, and then so we'll go ahead for public comment, and I don't know if there's anyone, Lisa or Ed, who wants to come up, or whoever.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm excited to be here. I've been here for over a year as the general manager of Tuolumne Utilities District, and I have to say, I apologize, this is my first time here, and it's been a priority, so finally we're here, and I thank you for this opportunity. I also want to thank you for the opportunity to actually just coincidentally be here when you're recognizing your employees. I think that's really valuable, and I can really see you have some great committed staff, so it's good to see. We try to do the same thing at Tuolumne Utilities District, so it was good to be here for that. Before I comment or answer any questions, I do want to point out that we do have Lisa Westbrook, who's public relations for Tuolumne Utilities District, and Glenn Nunnally. He's an associate engineer, but he's also the #1 guy. If you ever want to know anything about the watershed and hydrology, he's got it down. He's been doing it day in, day out for over a decade. So he's a vast library of knowledge, and he's really good at what he does. So I brought them here tonight just in case you had something very specific. But perhaps I can start with a few comments, and then if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer that. First of all, I'd like to just say, this is very important for the region. This has been going on since 2009 when the PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, went through the Spring Gap Stanislaus relicensing process under the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So there was a long drawn-out process back then, if any of you recall that. And under United States Code 401, the State Water Resource Control Board has an ability to regulate lake levels in lakes around the state of California, and they look at the benefits and try to come up with a balanced decision. The 401 certification that was done in 2009 was problematic for the region's water supply, and TUD, with support from PG&E and others, have been protesting that lake level elevation now for over 10 years. And there's been numerous studies from lake level management, on and on and on. Glenn Nunnally keeps tabs of all the meetings and reports and everything that has been done over the years. And I think we're up over 5 pages now of just all the notes of what meetings and what's been submitted in reports. So there's been a lot of work in this area. As you may or may not know, the region's water supply comes from the South Fork Stanislaus River, okay? And it's important to know that that's the source of water that we currently have. I may make a comment about that in a moment as more follow-up. But so the region uses natural flow from the Stanislaus River. That's during the winter when it's flowing in. We'll use the natural flow to feed our 14+ water treatment plants along with the ditches. But once we get into spring, summer, there's a term called end of spill. That's when the snowpack is done melting, fills Pinecrest and Lyons. It's that date that we call end of spill that becomes critical and the subject of this proposed 401 certification. At that point, TUD begins pulling from storage. We pull first from Lyons Reservoir and pull that down before ever tapping into Pinecrest Lake, which on a dry year we'll need to do. And we recognize the delicate balance between water supply and recreation and support both. We know that Tuolumne County residents are largely the #1 visitor at Pinecrest Lake. We want to make sure that recreational aspect of it is protected. But we're trying to strike a balance between water supply and recreation, and we believe in this new State Water Board draft 401 certification that they really did take an adaptive management approach to managing water supply, the reservoir, and recreation. So we believe in this draft order that you have before you that it strikes that delicate balance. And I want to point out why the draft order does provide a lower elevation. That's not the target. The target is still going to be the 5,610 feet of elevation up there. And then depending on end of spill, the draft order gives a range of dates that allow water levels to drop to 5603 in the driest, earliest end of spill scenario. The State Water Board did a CEQA document in 2015 called an Initial Study Mitigated Neg Deck. It was based on a lot of the lake level studies that TUD and PG&E had done in previous work. And they found at that time that you could drop Pinecrest to 5,600 with minimal mitigatable impact to recreation at Pinecrest Lake. This current order doesn't go to 5,600, it goes to 5,603. So we think it's a good balance. And a couple of last comments I'm going to make is that some people wonder, well, how efficient is Tuolumne Utilities District? And I will say that in California, all water utilities are heavily regulated, both from water loss out of our pressure distribution system that takes water from the treatment plants to your faucets to our agricultural and raw water deliveries that were heavily regulated. It's really one of the big cost drivers that TUED has every day, just trying to meet the needs of state mandates. In fact, there's a new water conservation mandate the state is promulgating that you may have heard about 50 gallons per person by 2030. And that's for your indoor usage, and then they're developing a water budget for your outdoor usage, and it's draconian. And I don't want to go down that path because it's very detailed, but Glenn's carefully tracking it. I'm just going to say that it is heavily regulating all utilities in California. It's another unfunded mandate, which all of us have to deal with, and from these especially rural areas where it impacts us and our ability to be able to meet those regulatory mandates. But I did want to leave with the last comment that the ISMND that the State Water Board did really provides a few mitigation measures to protect recreation at the lake. TUD and PG&E, well, I can't speak for PG&E. We're happy to make sure that recreation is something that is protected by all people, both from in-county, but we know from attendance that we have people coming from the Valley and the Bay Area, and we want it to be a positive experience for Tuolumne County. So we think this current draft order strikes the right balance, and we're asking your city council for support. And then last, I'll just say in 2015, TUD made that same request, and your city council was very kind and provided a support letter in 2015 for that CEQA document then as well. So with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Mark, you were the one that started to ask a question, so I'll go to you first.
Don't want to be greedy, but I can look ignorant first, I guess. The measurement for the water, is that in feet above sea level, in acre feet? I didn't find it anywhere in there and was trying to figure out. It seemed like.
Don't you love how sometimes, the water people just kind of leave out context? But yeah, that's the mean sea level elevation. And so when we throw around numbers like 5,600, 5,603, that's all reference to mean sea level.
It seemed to me pretty close to where I think Pinecrest is, but I didn't know. Okay, the other question was, is this letter pretty much just asking to lower the minimum from, what was it, 5,603 to 5,602?
No, what the draft order, what TUD is requesting is just a letter of support for this current draft order. The draft order provides a range of elevations where right now under the current regulatory mandate, it's 5610. And with a variance that TUD would go through an administrative process to request a variance, which is awkward as well, takes months to do. We have to try to forecast, do we really need the variance? We have to ask for the variance before we have perfect knowledge whether or not we need it. So there's a lot of details there, and Glenn's the guy to talk to if you're curious about that. But so 5608 is the current minimum elevation, and the problem with that is that during many years, especially this last 4-year drought, Pinecrest drops below 5608 without any diversions from TUD. It's because of climate conditions, environmental in-stream flow requirements downstream of Pinecrest, there's seepage, there's evaporation, and other impacts to Pinecrest that are the primary driver to what Pinecrest elevation is. And so I think it was 2016, it dropped below 5608, and TUD was unable to tap into Pinecrest for its water supply to meet the needs of Tuolumne County. We serve nearly 50,000 population. We have 14,000 ratepayers, And as you may, and that doesn't include Twain Hart Community Services District that we also wholesale water to. And so with their population, people were cut back as much as 50%. And that's draconian. I've been managing water for decades, and I would never ask anyone to cut back 50%. In addition to that, the TUD suffered a $2 million revenue impact because people were cutting back so much. And in rural areas where we have massive facilities and infrastructure that are very expensive to run, a $2 million annual loss cannot be made up. And so it creates an annual year-over-year impact. We want to serve the community, we want to serve the state, so we do believe in appropriate conservation, but not 50% draconian cutbacks because of this regulatory mandate that we couldn't divert water from storage at Pinecrest prior to Labor Day below 5608. And this new adaptive management approach that you have in your draft order, and hopefully I think it's in their council package, does that.
And, okay, is it the tourism, or to protect the tourism that is that the biggest driver for not being able to drop it below, what was it, well, 608?
We've talked to a number of folks, and yeah, it's tourism. They want to make sure that the environment up there, the aesthetics, you have cabin owners, they're all very concerned about this, and rightly so. We support their concerns. But we want to point out that you have 50,000 people in Tuolumne County that basically went without water. And the state constitutionally and here in Tuolumne County puts health and safety and water supply first. I mean, recreation's pivotal, it's important. We want to strike the right balance. We think the state did here. And I just want to emphasize that even at 5603, all the boat docks are available, the gas docks available, the boat launch is available, everything's still there and able to be used. And there's a huge beach. And there are mitigations that were identified in the State Water Board CEQA ISMND document that were adapted into this draft order that would need to be fulfilled. And there also requires a lot of communication and forecasting. It's not going to be just as simple, we can take it to a certain elevation. There's a lot of work to get there. And Glenn's going to be busy probably writing a lot of reports and communicating with the community about what that forecasted elevation is going to be. And then we have to improve some of the beach areas with rock stumps and removal and some fine sediment so people's toes feel good when they're on the sand.
Most of my questions actually were answered, but so the difference between 5603 and 5602, just visually, it's stuff that you will address by repairing the beach? I mean, you just
Well, again, we're
talked about
going from
stump removal.
5608 to 5603, but not in one drop.
Right.
There's different, depends on end of spill,
Right.
whether it's in
And
May
dates.
or June or July, that dictates what that allowed elevation is. But whatever that, so from 5603 and above, we do have to remove some rocks and stumps and make some beach improvements for the aesthetics up there and for the usability.
And it will still be the beautiful lake.
I believe so.
Okay. Well, and I just would like to say that there is the aesthetics of Pinecrest Lake, and I think that that's a Tuolumne County treasure. I mean,
Yes.
certainly. But also, if we are downstream, if we are conserving, our oak trees also are a Tuolumne County treasure. I mean, there are things to protect
Right.
downstream from Pinecrest Lake, so, that's it. You'd answer all
Well,
of my
I thank
other
you.
questions.
And I think I heard Glenn kind of whisper that 5603 is a rare event. And remember, we're not going to take it down just because we can. There's a lot of thinking that goes into the process. So it's really to assure water supply reliability for the future of Tuolumne County residents. And again, just to emphasize, we really do think it strikes a fair balance, and we hope for your support.
Any other questions? No? No?
Just throwing this out there because out of curiosity, Pinecrest, the dam is one of the older dams in the state, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What kind of, how healthy is the dam?
Well, I can tell you all dams are heavily regulated, and it has FERC inspections. They're called Part 12 inspections, and PG&E owns it, so PG&E is responsible for complying with all these current regulations, but they have FERC Part 12 inspections that are inspected every year and every fifth year. It's a comprehensive, rigorous inspection that costs on the order of about $500,000 because of a lot of the technical and geotechnical and modeling work that has to be done. And if there's any deficiencies in the dam, you do not get a choice on whether or not you want to fix it. You will be fixing that, and you're under a time order to make those repairs. So in addition to FERC, there's also California's DSOD, Division of Safety of Dams, and they also have their own inspection. So there's fees associated with that dam, there's inspections, and PG&E takes it seriously, and they do their due diligence. They also have to do catastrophic failure analysis, what inundation might be like downstream, so they do that risk probability analysis and contact downstream entities. So there's a lot of regulations, and yes, it is a century-old dam, but I have a house that's 80 years old, all built out of redwood. When I crawl underneath it, it looks brand new. So, you know, some of these dams, even though they're old, they could be easily around another 100, 200 years. So from what I understand, it's in pretty good shape.
PG&E also owns Lions Dam as well, is that correct?
Yes, they do.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, is there any more questions for Mr. Pattison?
No?
Okay.
Thank
sir.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else like to speak on public comment on this item? Okay, if not, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion and/or motion.
Move to approve the letter to the State Water Resources Control Board to lower Pinecrest Lake to 5,602 feet when the end of spill occurs in order to protect the city of Sonora water supply.
That was fast. That's awesome. I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Williams and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins to authorize the mayor to sign the letter to the State Water Resources Control Board in support of TUD's Spring Gap Draft Pinecrest Lake Level Amendment. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item number 2 is accept the 2019 Public Safety Power Shutoff Resiliency Allocation from the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services in the amount of $217,551. Mr. Gorski.
So after we had the public safety power shutoffs, Governor Newsom moved the $75 million into a grant fund to mitigate the effects on local government. Of the $75 million, he set aside $10 million for cities. The max award was limited to $500,000. And after we applied for that, we have received $217,551. And staff would like to, we would like to do a generator for this building so we can sort of turn City Hall into a potential emergency management hub. And then we have some obsolete and or undersized generators at fire and PD that we could also upgrade with the money. So that's what we're asking you to accept.
Okay, is there any questions for, no?
I guess my big question, so fire and police will be taken care of if, you know, we accept this.
Yes.
There was a thing about a repeater earlier that the chief had brought up, recognizing one of the employees of the year. Will anything be done with those, or is that allowed under this?
Yeah, we only received about half of what we asked for, and the big 3 items are fixed asset items, basically. So those are the generators that we received.
So as the public will ask, because I'm sure we'll get calls on this, generators cost that much because we can go down to Lowe's and buy one for $500.
No, this is a professional.
I'll get that call.
Yeah, no, this is a professionally installed generator for the building. This is one that when the power goes off, the building will operate and we can still work and have, we can be here when there's an emergency as well. It's not just for power safety, those shutoffs.
And I guess this question would go to our city administrator. So if City Hall has a generator, and it's extremely hot outside, 105, 110, whatever, would this possibly be a cooling center?
I believe that is determined countywide, your cooling centers, and I kind of look to our chief new, because I think she kind of coordinates that with the county, but the cooling centers are generally coordinated with the county, and they're generally coordinated with your, I believe, the Red Cross, and other jurisdictions, but that is something we can bring up. I don't know how much space we would have for outside persons to be here, but yes, that is something that coordination with the county would need.
Okay, fair enough.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
I just have a comment. When I read, not on your report, but Cal OES report, it says generators and generator connections for essential facilities with an emphasis on clean energy and green solutions where possible. And I think generators are the first step, but I would love to see the city move to clean energy whenever possible in the future.
Yeah, they do have propane-powered generators rather than diesel, and that would probably be something we would be looking at.
Well, I think we should be more progressive than that. I mean, like solar panels and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm not sure there's enough
not sure I
money to do
consider-
solar and enough battery to get us through an emergency.
And the point being that it is the reliability of just being able to turn it on and not rely on good conditions for those.
I don't mean without a generator. I mean, I think it has to have a generator, I think. But I think we should always think about green energy these days.
Absolutely.
Sure. The question I had is, it comes from a discussion that was had earlier today at the Government Affairs Committee of the Chamber. And the PG&E representative there talked about a different program that would either set aside I guess it's the same program, that the PG&E would be setting up generators for essential services through PG&E somehow. They're looking at the PS and looking to have little micro areas that they can power during the PS. If that were to happen, and they specifically mentioned the PD as one of the places, are we tied now with this grant money to have to make the upgrades at these locations? Or can we be flexible if that particular program comes through?
No, we're not tied. We did not, the grant isn't specific to location, it's specific to what we do with the money.
Okay.
So if there's something would, change as far as there's now coverage at a certain building, then we can certainly reprogram that.
Oh, good, because I was concerned about that. And also, I know we got half the money, but one of my thoughts was that we had a portable generator at some point. And especially if PG&E were to basically pay for one for the police or one for the fire or both, it would be, I would think that a portable situation would be an excellent asset for the city. So I just want to make sure that we're able to, if all these things come through, that we're able to do that.
Yes, we are able to reprogram that money if other things, fit our needs and we don't have to put one at PD, for instance.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. There's no further questions for staff. I'm going to open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for further discussion or a motion.
Move to spend the $217,551 on a new generator for City Hall and upgraded generators at the police and fire stations. It is important that we are open and are providing all safety services during a public safety power shutoff.
Aren't we moving to accept the grant?
Yes, the recommendation would be to accept the grant money.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Williams and seconded by Councilmember Plummer to accept the grant. And is there any further discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 3 of new business is authorize the Sonora Fire Department to electronically submit Federal Emergency Management Agency or FEMA grants authorize the city administrator and/or fire chief to execute all documents relating to the grant applications, and direct the fire chief to return to the city council with the application results and to accept the awards.
Good
Chief
evening,
New.
council members, Mr. Mayor, and members of the public. The Sonora Fire Department is requesting that City Council authorize us to submit applications to receive federal funding from FEMA through their Assistance to Firefighter Grant Program. The program provides funding for all types of safety equipment, vehicles, wellness and fitness, facilities, and communications for fire departments across the country. There are 3 grants that we've identified this year that we'd like to apply for. One is a regional grant for not just City of Sonora, but working with our partners in collaboration for self-contained breathing apparatus. The county was elected for a grant back in 2005 for SCBA bottles and harnesses to go with those. They are expiring. The bottles are expiring as of next year. DOT, the Department of Transportation, will not give us an extension on the bottles, so they're all going to be out of service. So we are hoping that we'll have a better chance for a regional grant to apply together so that we're buying the same type of like equipment so we can interchange them on scene. As you know, or if you don't know, when there is a large incident in the county, it takes all of us together working collaboratively to make sure that we mitigate the emergency. So having like equipment and stuff and equipment that we can interchange is extremely important. I did sit in on a webinar for regional grants this year, and they have that as the highest priority. So we're hoping that applying that route will get us a better chance of receiving a grant this year. The second we were looking at as vehicle acquisition for a smaller Type 6 vehicle, which would be able to maneuver in the city a little bit better. After sitting through the webinar, I don't know if we're going to be able to apply for that. For the simple fact is they have limited the amount of funds that one agency can apply for, and I had elected since I think I got elected to write the regional grants since the city was so successful in getting a lot of grants in 2019. So I don't know if we'll have enough time to apply for that, but I wanted to bring that to your attention that that might be something we're looking into as well. The third one that we would like to apply for is a safety equipment grant, and that is to purchase more additional turnouts and wildland equipment. Right now we don't quite have all of our personnel with a second set of turnouts, which is recommended by the National Fire Protection Agency. We had a large amount of our turnouts go out of service in 2018, and through smaller grants we have been keeping up with trying to keep our inventory up, but not enough to provide everyone with a second set. Their recommendation is that each firefighter has 2 sets of structural turnouts so that when they do use them on either a car accident or go into a fire, they can be properly cleaned and they're not off-gassing the carcinogens, and they have a second set to put on while those are getting properly laundered. So those are the 3 that we would be looking into applying for. The FEMA grants provide 90% of the approved purchase price. The city would require to provide a 10% match on any of the grants that we apply for. Funding under this program allows, like I said, for regional and individual grants, and we're requesting to submit for both types. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
It said a couple of things. One was that the DOT is actually the agency that rates the tanks?
The bottles, yes. So they're the
That's
ones who
interesting.
regulate the licensing and the 5-year hydro certification on the bottles. And we did write in and ask for an extension, and it was denied, so.
Okay, and the other thing was you mentioned the Type 6 engine, Type 6 vehicle, and I'm not sure everyone knows, was that kind of like what the squad was?
Yeah, so it's a smaller vehicle, kind of like a half-ton pickup truck, but on the back would be enclosed and have a small water tank of about 200 to 300 gallons. They refer to them as quick attacks in the wildland. I think for our areas around here, it's smaller, it's more maneuverable. Areas where we can't take the engine off-road, we would be able to take something like that and possibly get into a fire, stop it while it's small. The other item with the Type 6 is my vision moving forward, looking at a big picture, is to respond to that on a lot of the EMS calls, which is 70 to 80% of the calls in the city, instead of wear and tear on a $600,000 engine. The Type 6s are more in the range of 170 to 200,000. So still expensive, but a lot less, and you can get a lot of use out of them and still have the engine to respond on larger incidents.
Okay, is there any other questions for staff? Colette?
It's an interest question, and
Colette. I said Colette
I'm
first.
sorry, I didn't.
It's okay. I do it to you all the time. By accident. I don't quite understand what a turnout is. Is that something they put over?
That's
Is that
the
protective
turnout. It's
clothing?
a jacket and pants that are insulated, has a vapor barrier and a radiant heat barrier so that they can go inside the fire a lot closer to the flames. And then the self-contained breathing apparatus, or we refer to, the SCBA's, as the tank with the fresh air to breathe. Yeah.
What else was I going to ask? I think that's it.
And just an idea on the match, the
was my
SCBA grant is
question.
going to be close to $900,000, but each individual agency that's putting in provides that 10% match. And so on the three examples I gave, our match would be up to about 20,000 because we would need roughly around 18 to 20 packs for the city itself.
That was, now I know what my other question was.
Yeah.
So you have listed $50,000 about here.
Correct.
That's the city's 10% match. Is that budgeted? Do we put that in the budget? And I feel like I should know that, having just reviewed the,
It's not in the
Your
general
budget?
fund budget. It's actually allocated in our 399, which is the monies we retrieve back from reimbursements on deployments.
all right, thank you. That's it.
Mr. Plummer?
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Chief,
Yes.
the type 6 wagons, or, well, I think you describe it as a half-ton pickup. Do they have the capacity also, if it's not too far off-road, to tether into any of the engines so that they can have a greater supply of water?
Typically, it's something that they would go out, fill up, and then come back in.
Okay.
Usually, a Type 6 is, we're going to have a water tender on scene at the location that they're getting into anyway, and they can be filled up by the water tenders that are on scene. Or they can top off from a hydrant if it's in the city location.
I discovered a fire this last summer, and so there was a water pumper on the job, which probably had 200 gallons, but then they had the water truck. They were able to.
Yeah, they
Go
can
off
fill up
directly
off
into
that. Typically, they wouldn't fill from another fire engine because they're saving their water too, but yeah, from the water tenders or any type of a hydrant source, they would be able to fill up from.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Chief New? Okay. You still had a question for Mr. Gorski? Did you, Connie? No. Oh, no, that was, okay, all right. So then I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment. Oh,
Did she have?
no, she had a question for Mr. Gorski, but I think it was answered by when Colette asked the questions.
Right.
So we'll go ahead and open it for public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for a motion or discussion.
I would like to move to authorize the Sonora.
Can I ask,
Hang on.
I have one more question. I'm sorry. I just found I had lost my agenda. At the very end of number 3 of the little description, it says, the fire chief will return to the city with the application results and to accept the award. So we won't know this before you apply.
Correct.
We will not.
No. So this is just authorization to submit the applications and then, cross our fingers and hope that write a well-written grant and it's accepted. Yeah.
So this is authorization just to apply for the grant because it requires a city match. I wanted to ensure that the council was aware that it will require city money for a match and that it is giving me the authorization or Chief New the authorization to sign the applications. We will return back with the, whether or not it's been accepted. And
Or awarded,
Yeah, awarded, and then with the acceptance for the council to accept the award.
So if we get the grant, we're accepting the awards at a later date, not
Yes.
at this time.
Not at this time.
Yeah, they
okay,
haven't,
just to make sure that-
they haven't been submitted yet,
They
so.
haven't been submitted.
Right.
I was hoping to attach an example application, but FEMA redid their entire website, so their application is completely brand new, and it won't let you print it out till you actually finish the application. So I apologize for that, but we'll have a sample for hopefully next year's application cycle.
So this is just like last meetings with the police department where we asked for authorization to apply, and then, like we said, we'll be back on the status of the application and to accept the award if we are awarded.
I just remember when I worked for the county, when I wrote grants, the Board of Supervisors I'd have a letter of approval from the Board of Supervisors to submit with my grant.
If it is required, some grants require a resolution, some grants require a letter of approval. These grants just require authorization from the city administrator to sign the application.
Yeah, the USDA grants that you had to do a resolution actually for police department and the fire department for the response vehicles, those did require a resolution. FEMA usually in the AFG doesn't require a resolution, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay,
I would still like to,
okay.
with that new knowledge, still like to move to authorize the Sonora Fire Department to electronically submit federal, FEMA grants, authorize the city administrator and/or fire chief to execute all documents relating to the grant applications, and direct the fire chief to return to the city council with the application results and to accept the awards.
Well, no, not to accept the awards. Right?
Correct.
Because we'll accept the awards separately if we get that.
With the results, correct.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Plummer and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins to do what Mr. Plummer said.
That excludes, sorry, Council.
Yes, and that includes accepting the results.
Correct.
Sure.
Is that
Yeah, I just wanna
accepting the awards?
I just want to clarify that the recommendation does say direct the fire chief to return with the application result and to accept the awards. That's why it's written that way. It's just directing the fire chief to come back with the, whether or not we've been awarded, and to direct the fire chief to come back to ask the council to accept the award. Not that we're asking them to accept it now, we're just directing the chief to do that in the future.
Okay. With that in mind, should we move again?
So moved.
I'll second again.
Okay. Okay. I think we got it. We're not going to formally accept the award until we get the award.
Yes.
That's the main thing. Okay. Is there any further
Tis my
comment?
understanding.
Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Passes unanimously. You're welcome. Item number 4, receive the fiscal year 2019 through 2020 mid-year budget review. Mr. Gorski.
You would just give us a second.
We're
so
going
we
to have a
can set up-
presentation, aren't we? Yep.
Yes.
And we are going to make the PowerPoint available to Mr. Day
Yes.
for the, okay. For access to Almy?
Yeah, it's on the table.
Oh, I'm
So
sure.
that's what that was. Figure out what that was.
I don't think we have a slideshow, do we?
So, this evening, we're asking the council to review the mid-year budget. This is for fiscal year 2019, 2020. And we intend to give you just a synopsis of where the city of Sonora is for the end of our second quarter, which ended December 31st, 2019. So it's the first half of your year. So because of that, we should be seeing about 50% of revenues received and about 50% of expenses expended. So as a summary, your revenue trends are about flat compared to your fiscal year 18-19, where we were at on December 31st, 2018. So we're comparing mid-year over mid-year. Our revenues are similar to last year in that most, our economically sensitive revenues are our sales tax and our TOT tax. So the majority of our revenues are derived from those taxes. and your general fund expenditures are trending lower than budget. So we are under budget with expense. That's what we want to be from a expenditure perspective. We are attributing that to salary savings from the first half of the year. We had open and vacant positions that were allowed us to expend less due to those open positions. However, as we go forth into the end of this year or the second part of this year, you're going to see with those positions filled a use of that expense. And then also we wanted to ensure that those personnel costs, when we look at fiscal year 2021 going into next year's budget, we're going to be seeing an increase in personnel costs, and this is something we want to bring to you when we're reviewing personnel costs because of our CalPERS, mostly because of our CalPERS costs. So one of the things we wanted to show you is looking at our revenue and expense trends year over year from starting in about 2011 when the recession, when the recession hit, we were trying to climb ourselves out of the recession, looking at your revenue versus expense. And you'll notice we've had a pretty healthy gap between the revenue and expense, which has allowed your general fund to have a pretty healthy fund balance because you have more revenues than expense. But you'll notice a flattening of that revenue and expense in the last couple of fiscal years, meaning your revenues and expense are coming to a T and you're leveling out, which means your fund balance, you're not going to see an increase to your fund balance when your expenses and your revenues are coming in status quo to each other. So again, we're seeing a leveling out or a coming together between your revenue and expense, and that's going to make a significant impact to your fund balance. And when we talk about fund balance is your balance of funds, of cash in your general fund, of what is left over after everything is designated against that fund. So you'll notice that kind of peachish, tannish color, that's your unassigned fund balance. The green represents your non-spendable or your restricted committed fund balance, so monies that the council does not have availability to use other than the legislative purpose in which it is intended to be used. So that unassigned fund balance is about 2.6 million. Why Chris and I are showing you this is the City Council has not formally adopted any type of formal reserve policy. Right now we are using fund balance as a reserve. GATSB, your Government Accounting Standards Board, really recommends as a best practice for jurisdictions to have a formally adopted reserve policy, a portion of that fund balance, of that general fund balance to be dedicated as formal reserves in times of economic uncertainty. So we're drawing the attention to the City Council for this because this is something that Chris and I will be bringing to the council come proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. If the council so chooses, we would recommend to formally adopt a reserve policy with your fund balance.
Before you change, what is the yellow in the middle that's gone away?
That is restricted fund balance. I don't know what specific item, but usually it is some type of hold on a cash balance that is contractually obligated. And so the auditors obviously had that amount set aside. Again, it was probably a contractual arrangement that required something to be set aside.
As opposed to the non-spendable, which takes a legislative or a commitment by either the council or the state to hold in a non-spendable.
So contract versus legislative
Yes.
mandate.
Yes.
And in the business world, fund balance is really, what you would think of as equity. And so that green is also, it can be our assets, buildings we own.
Sure.
Those are non-spendable, in a sense, are not liquid.
Right. Okay.
So Chris is going to go into where we're at, the status of our revenues.
Okay, so the big ones for us are sales tax. That's around 47% of our budgeted revenues. And those revenues are flat through half of the year. They're very similar to what we had last year, and they're basically on target with what we had budgeted. Property tax is the second largest revenue source for the city. That's 15.1% of budgeted revenue in 2019-20. And that again is
trending within budget, what we anticipated. So there isn't any additional revenues from that that we are getting that we didn't expect. So it's on budget. Do that one?
Sure. So something, the council formally adopted your pilot program for your cannabis, your medicinal cannabis retail. We are showing in your mid-year, at the end of December 31st, there is a reduction in anticipated revenue due to one dispensary that is not open yet. So if you recall, the council allowed for 2 medicinal retail locations to be open. One has still not opened. So we had budgeted revenue to be received by that retail establishment, and those revenues have not been received. So there will be a budget adjustment at the end of this presentation that we're asking the council to do an action on because of this loss of revenue. And again, your budget adjustment will be done at the end of the presentation.
So this slide shows the revenues, actual versus budget for the 6 months ending December 31st. And on the left is last year through 6 months. And on the right is the gray is 2019-20 through 6 months. And you can see our total revenues through December are 48% of what we anticipated.
So if you look the year over year, that first column is what the total fiscal year, or excuse me, that third column from the left is your total overall, that 2.692 million. That's your total overall budgeted amount for the year. We have received the 1.389. If you compare that from fiscal year 18-19 at that same time period, last year we received 1.417. So we're actually trending just a little bit down from your sales tax. And just slightly up in your property tax. Overall though, revenue-wise, we're up about 300,000, but still trending at about that 48% mark of total received revenues as budgeted.
Before we leave that slide, I was really curious what other sources were, since that was somewhat different and had changed dramatically for the 6-month period right there. The 58
Other sources, many times are one-time reimbursements we receive. It could be even like there's some post-training reimbursement. It depends on how many potential officers we send. There's some insurance reimbursements. So if, there 1 year you'll receive something and the next year you will not.
Thank you.
And the other, my question I have is the interest revenue almost 4 times as great as the previous year, even though the budget for interest is much less. Is there some sort of, are we investing something somewhere? I mean, savings?
Yeah, we anticipated that interest rates would go down, so we did budget less for interest. And we did have a few projects we anticipated being completed that have not been completed, so we would expect, we thought that there would be a use of that cash. But it hasn't. We've invested more since our fund balance is now higher than before. We've invested more money in an interest-bearing account than we really anticipated we would have.
Yay.
So looking at our expenses, our expenditures.
So midway through the year, you would expect expenditures, salaries, overtime, benefits, you would expect them to be right around 50%. We've had a few open positions. We've had a few delays in filling positions, and so right now we're at 45% of budgeted. So we're under budget. We've spent less than we expected on salaries and overtime. And then operational costs are expenses that staff have more control over. That is primarily projects at this point that we have not either started or spent money on that we anticipated doing in the fiscal year 19-20.
Want me
you back up for me for just a second? Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're right. This is where I have questions.
So this chart, again, the gray on the right shows fiscal 1920 adopted versus actual. You go all the way to the bottom, total operating expenditures. We're at 43% of budgeted. We would anticipate that we would normally be 50%. You can see that salaries are lower. Overtime is higher because we've had a few missing or unfilled positions. And basically, there have been savings because we have not been able to fill all of the positions that are approved.
But I will add, it is minimal. It is minimal salary savings. And so because, even though we anticipated some salary savings, it is minimal. So going into this, the end of fiscal year 1920, we want to be spending as much as we are receiving, right? We want to make sure that the revenues are coming in to support your expenses. So we should be trending, as we're seeing, revenues at about 48% of that, at that halfway point. So our expenses really are kind of right on par where we should be. And we don't want to be spending that whole 50%. We want to be fiscally prudent to ensure that the revenues are coming to support the expenses.
Can I ask a question? I have a question about, you said salaries are higher? Is that what you said?
No.
Oh, what'd you say about, excuse me, overtime is higher.
Overtime
Are
is
you
higher.
talking just in terms of as a percentage?
As a percentage, correct.
Because actually.
We budgeted a certain amount for overtime and we are more than 50%.
But actually, overtime is lower, right? It was 99,000.
Versus last year.
Versus last year.
But not
Right.
budget.
Right, but, yeah.
But that's how we work. We are budgeting, and we're getting approval for a budget, and if it's over that, then it's over budget.
And I also found that to be true, and I know that this is not what our job is, but for supplies and materials, that it's lower, but actually the expenditure for supplies and materials is much higher, it seems to me. And for me, that's actually more important. So you can just increase the budget and then percentages look better.
And it's a portion of your budget. So if you look at 18-19, it was budgeted at 968,000 and actual was spent was 421. This last, for 1920, in this fiscal year, we budgeted 1.3 million.
Right.
So obviously there was, projects or other materials needed to meet those projects, and the actual for that is 481. So we're at 36% of budget. So even though year over year we have spent more, we are actually trending at that 36% of what was budgeted with anticipated projects and so forth in mind. Because you'll see that, $400,000 or so increase year over year from the 968 to the 1.3 million.
Not how I look at budgets, but I get it. I get it. And it's just, but you could really go into deficit spending by those kinds of, I thought that was a pretty substantial increase. And it's for projects, I get that, but I think that's, for me, that's equally as important as the percentage of what was budgeted.
Sure,
But I know that's not our job.
Yeah, so don't forget, you budgeted at 1.3 million. So obviously there was, I wasn't here, there was justification of why that 1.3 million was budgeted. So as opposed to the 968 from last year. So you're looking at the portion of what is spent from the budget.
Right, I get that.
So we just, wanted to show you where we're at from a Measure I perspective and what Measure I was intended to be used by our public safety agencies, our police or fire, and a portion within public works. What I want to draw your attention to is your fund balance within those funds. So they're separate funds outside of your general fund. So that previous slide I showed you of your overall general fund balance, these are separate from that. We budget specific, expenses from those funds. There are specific salaries tied to those funds. And so you'll notice, your beginning fund balance, what we anticipate those revenues to be, what we anticipate your expenses to be, and then you see your actual revenues and your actual expenses, and what the ending fund balance is of that fund at the end of the quarter, so at the end of December 31st, 2019. So those are critical for your public safety agencies, again, just police, fire, and your public works department. So talked about recommended budget adjustments. This does require a 4/5 vote of the council because they are budget adjustments between departments. We talked about the reduction in cannabis revenues that is leading to an overall reduction in anticipated revenues. So we are adjusting the budget where we're seeing slight increases in revenues to make up for that reduction in $50,000. You're also seeing on the expense side an increase in legal fees to about $65,000. So we needed to make adjustments on the expense side. We mean reducing line items, reducing expenses in other areas due to that increase in expense. Overall, there is a zero net budget change. We are adjusting in other areas of the budget. We're not pulling from your fund balance due to the reduction of revenue or the increase in legal fees. We are simply making adjustments in other areas of your budget, but these adjustments are needed at this point because of, again, your reduction in cannabis revenues and your increase in legal fee costs.
Questions? You have Cliff?
Yes.
I understand that the net budget change has to be zero. I mean,
It doesn't necessarily have to. You can pull it from, you could have an overall net reduction of $115,000, and that would be pulled from your fund balance. But we have seen where we could adjust in other departments, or excuse me, in other areas or other departments to make up for those reductions needed.
because I personally would like to see some money spent in economic development this year. I mean, I think there are things, since we're haven't hired an economic development person, I think that there are things that could.
This doesn't drain that line item. There's still almost 30,000 remaining in this line item. And we've already spent 7,500 on the Chapin concept report.
Right, but you are, I mean, I think you're moving, it says the budgeted economic development expenditure will occur in the next fiscal year, correct? Right.
That was the assumption.
That was the assumption.
After
I mean,
the last council.
I feel like since we have left the TCEDA, we haven't really seen the benefits of all that money that we were spending there. And there are things like, you know, we could put trees in pots on Washington Street. I mean, I feel like there are things we should be doing for this community and for this town, and not just bumping it to the next year. And 30,000 isn't enough. I think we need more than that. That's just my opinion. You know, it's just my opinion.
I will say, and I know, I'm sorry, Councilmember Plummer, I think you have something to say. I will say, there is not a budgeted contingency in your budget. Normally, budgets have a contingency where when situations like this arise, you can pull from those contingencies that fill the holes. Right now, since there is no contingency, we are looking at other ways to make up that reduction. And unfortunately, we're looking at areas in which we're not seeing the expenses at the moment. Economic development, because of the dissolution of the EDA, we're seeing where we can pull or we can reduce that line item to make up for the increase in legal fees. That's not to say that we can go forth and do some economic development. However, that's something Chris and I are going to bring up in next year's budget, is a budgeted contingency for issues that arise such as this, instead of dipping into your informal reserves such as fund balance to make up the needed budget adjustments. So right now we're left with little option. We need to do budget adjustments, or we're dipping into your informal reserves to make up the adjustments.
I just feel like we haven't seen anything, I mean, except for that $7,500 in economic development since we left the TCEDA. That was not what, I just don't want to see that money just being used to balance fund balances. I want to see it used on the city because I think the city deserves it.
I agree, Councilmember Setch. However, the council did agree to increase costs in your legal fees with that contract. And so those costs have to be assumed somewhere.
No, it's not really budget, it's just I don't, we're not done with economic development, and we're still not even done with the TCEDA, and going forward until that's somewhat resolved, I think we need to be extremely cautious considering the huge sums involved.
Yeah, but that will not be resolved right now in June.
No.
So this is just through June,
This is just
money.
through June.
And when we bring back the next budget, hopefully there's some clarity in that, and we would then budget for that as well.
So if we
That'd
want,
be good clarity.
I hope.
so we did want to spend money on economic development in excess of $30,000, which is there now, assuming we go with this. Then we can, at that time, we can pull money out of the, well, I call it council reserves, but you call it the informal
Fund
fund balance at that point. So it's a matter of developing that project, and if that gets developed between now and June, there's still opportunity to get money from that fund balance if it's in excess of that money.
There is.
There is, although I would stress the importance of that is the council's only reserve, so we want to be using that as cautiously as possible.
Personnel is a good thing.
Yeah, we don't know what the effect, if any, it's coronavirus, there's other, the economy has been humming along, and there is a downturn coming whenever that may be. And when you're reliant on sales tax as 50% of the revenue, and that decreases, if it would decrease 5%, that would be a very significant thing for the city.
Any other comments? Okay. Go ahead.
So just wrapping up, what we showed you, again, our revenues are flat, 18-19 versus 19-20, which means when we're going into fiscal year 2021, we have to be thinking of where our anticipated revenues will be. If they're trending flat right now, where will they be trending going into 2021? And we need to be aware that there are going to be increased expenditures going into 2021 with employee CalPERS costs. So that's something that Chris and I wanted to draw your attention to as we start formulating 2021, that revenues, we're going to be looking heavily at revenues and where those sales tax anticipation of TOT revenues, looking at our property tax, looking at all those different options available to the city, and then also working with our departments to bring forth a balanced budget going into 2021 with the anticipated increased costs for employees. So this does require an action by the council because we did the budget adjustment. We are requiring an action by the council due to those budget adjustments.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. We talked last year about restoring the council's stipend to its original, and that was supposed to start in March, I believe.
It was discussed.
And was that budgeted?
It was budgeted.
So what do we
It
do?
would require council action to increase that.
We did that.
No, we talked about it, we never voted for it.
Are you sure?
I am positive, because I would have voted against, that was the time when you said that if I
It was
didn't like it,
discussed.
I could give it to charity,
Oh,
but we
right.
did not vote on it.
So could that be agendized then, maybe?
Yes. I will also point out that tomorrow there is an item on the ballot for the residents of the city to determine whether or not the city clerk position will be going from an elected to appointed position. There can be financial costs associated with going from an elected to an appointed. You're going from an elected that receives a stipend versus if the council wants to actually look at appointing an employee to the position of city clerk. So I'm just throwing that out there, that there could be potentially financial implications of that ballot measure.
This took truth out of our hands anyway, correct?
It is until the public decides.
Okay, any further questions for staff? Mr. Palmer?
Yes. The nature of the motion required to make the change, because you say that we need to take an action, but I wouldn't know what I'm formulating if I were to be the one doing it. And maybe I'm the only one in that position, but
I would request the council approve the budget adjustments as listed, and it requires a 4/5 vote of the council because it is a budget adjustment changing appropriation between departments. So I ask the council to approve the budget adjustments as listed in the fiscal year 1920 mid-year review.
so moved.
Not yet. Not yet. Public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none.
I'm going to still say so moved because I've forgotten the exact language already. I think it's pretty clear, though, that as requested, so.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the fiscal year budget report, mid-year budget report, and to approve the changes as listed in the PowerPoint presentation and in the memo. Is there any further discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you both.
All right. No. Item J is monthly reports. There are none. Item K is Division Sonora Committee report. There is none. Item L is communications. There are none. Item M is council member and department head reports. Start at the back of the room with Community Development Director, Ms. Kellogg. Ooh, handout.
Yay. Oh, in color, too. 4-color printing. Wow. We're rich.
Yay.
So as Jim was saying tonight, and I know that you guys have heard, also because the media picked up on it, after Tim left, Mike and I put our heads together. We heard, several times, and you guys have heard, there's concerns about pedestrian safety especially in the South Washington area, in particular at Linton Street. So we put our heads together to think outside of the box and see if we could come up with something that the city could maybe do to lighten up the crosswalks and make them a little bit more visible. So this is what we call our pilot project. And seriously, we looked outside the box. We looked at what other nations were even doing at crosswalks. And that included some lighting, and we looked at solar lighting because of the costs associated with trying to trench and put any lights in at the crosswalks, and where that source of electricity would come from. We also looked at what kind of signs that we might be able to put that are not as obtrusive as some of the signs we've seen that were proposed for other projects. And then we looked at what kind of, to the point of what kind of reflectant we can put in the paint when they're painting, and 3M beads that are a little bit more reflective. And then Mike also found the reflective road markers that he used down there on South Washington Street. There's lighter ones as well, but we started out with the reflective ones to see if they would reflect enough. And when we got it to the point where we were happy with it, which we kind of are at this point, because we actually swapped out the lights once because we thought they weren't bright enough, we really are now looking for any comment. It's about a $600 cost to the city is all for that crosswalk. And we were able to use street money because Chris said we could. So again, this is a grassroots effort of your staff, just putting our heads together to see if we can come up with an idea that nobody has thought of yet, and see if we can't make those crosswalks a little safer. And we've heard lots of positive from the public. I haven't had any comments back from you guys, but we'd really like you to take a look at it, tell us what you like, what you don't like, and then we're going to actually be looking at areas where we can duplicate these efforts. And maybe not all the aspects. Every crosswalk, some of them have streetlights by them, so they're a little brighter. Some of them, on one side they're dull, the other side they have a street light. The other thing we'll be looking at this week is later this week, Mike and I'll be going out to look at parking spaces that are too close to crosswalks. And we're going to start looking at that to make those adjustments as well. So anyway, I just want to bring that to your attention. The media got here to you guys before I could because somebody saw what we were doing out there finally. We literally been working on it for about 3 months, testing this and testing that. And like I said, it was a joint effort between Mike and I, and Mike put a lot of thought into it, and then the Public Works staff went out and made it work. And the nice part, he put things will work for Public Works. He decided where he should put the reflectants that they can still work, plow and stuff if they need to. So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring to your guys' attention, and I thank Mike. It actually has been a very pleasant experience working together on this. So
Cool, good team effort.
Give him a raise.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful. I noticed it right away when I drove down after work at night.
Yeah.
And it reflected. So you say it costs $600 for the signage, the solar unit, the pole, and the reflectors?
Yeah, everything.
Wow. I
Yeah.
was expecting something like that would cost more than that.
This is a grassroots. We didn't have a lot to
Yeah,
work with ever.
Sure. And I
So-
also noticed the reflectants down far
Yeah,
William and
once they
Gold and Church.
It
Well,
was
not
a
Church.
successful thing, so it's like,
Yeah.
put them in, what the heck, got nothing to lose. And
And not in the wheel track as well.
yeah,
I
yeah,
noticed that as well. That
like I
was real
said,
good.
Public Works, they needed to put them where they needed to put them, not where we told them to put them, so.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
I'd like to say
Wonderful.
thank you for your
Thanks.
initiative. That's wonderful.
thanks.
Dark crosswalks. Good job on Lytton Street. South Washington Street is dark. All crosswalks need to be repainted and reflectors added. Safety is first.
Thank you. So let us know, any comments that you have, if you hear any concerns over the signs, because we did put signs up, let me know, because they are the yellow pedestrian signs, so let me know. Anyway, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next would be Chief New.
I just wanted to thank the city administrator and staff for putting on the reception tonight for all the city employees. We had a great turnout. I know they all appreciated it. It's nice to see things coming back to a family-oriented atmosphere, and just want to say thanks. So.
Oh, Chief, by the way, before you go, I was going to ask you before, but when we were talking about grants, but how are we coming along on the rig?
Well,
should I not ask?
I've been emailing him every day. The chassis is underway, so they're hoping mid-April, first part of May, they'll start the build-up on the body, so.
So we're pretty much on schedule, or not so much?
Our fingers crossed.
Oh, okay.
It should be, well, we accepted the grant, it was September. They have 1 year to complete the engine from that timeframe.
Oh, if they're
Although
still-
it wasn't officially accepted and approved until late October, so the grant organizer from FEMA said that they would push that date back and work with us for that.
good,
Otherwise,
good.
then the penalty that was in the contract does kick in for the manufacturer, so.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure they want to get it done as quickly as
yeah.
possible too, but I want it safe, so I don't want them to cut any corners.
Exactly. All right, thanks. Administrative Services Director, Mr. Gorski.
Nothing else tonight.
Okay, Chief Vanderweel.
No report tonight, thank you.
Okay. County
Nothing
Administrator.
additional tonight.
Okay. Colette?
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Actually, I kind of skipped the counselor. Do you have anything?
No report.
Okay. And our city administrator?
I just wanted to to make one point of clarification for those that are looking at their citywide ballot for tomorrow's election. There is the TOT tax initiative for the county on the city ballot. I did speak with Debbie Batista to ensure that this is, something that the city jurisdictions, the city residents do vote on, even though it is only increasing the TOT for the unincorporated area. It will not be increasing TOT revenue within the incorporated city of Sonora. So just wanted to make that point of clarification.
Can I ask you something about that? But we will discuss putting that on November's ballot for the city, correct?
Yes, if the council wants to agendize that, we can definitely do that.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm just waiting 24, 25 hours and it's all good. 25 hours and counting.
Well,
And there's
With
four
the
of us
wi-
up here waiting.
there's what?
There's 4 of us up here waiting
Yeah.
on edge for 25 hours and
And
20
it probably won't be,
Yeah, I'm the
probably
only
won't be
one that
decided
sleeps
then.
at
I know.
night.
Yeah.
I sleep just fine.
Mr. Plummer.
So, that was a perfect segue into something that is on my heart, and that is that we allocated $200,000 for the bathrooms for the farmer's market some number of years ago. And I think that it would really behoove us, especially while I still have some import on this council, to have made some significant headway and maybe even have them open before we even talk about adding taxes to our population. I am certainly willing to consider it and think we must, after speaking with our chief of police at some length. I personally would support it and probably end up going out and advocating for it because I'm moved by the need, but we have to be able to show results from what we have already started. And I realized a lot of them with the asbestos and stuff takes it out of our hands, but I don't think we should be discussing that until we can at least have completed some of the projects that we've already allocated money for. So that's it for this evening.
Okay.
I would love one.
So when Tim left, you guys, there was a stack that he gave me of things, and that was one of those things. So after he left, Chris and I got together, we got contracts signed. They just finished the asbestos removal. So now the next step is to get in there and see any other leakage, check out the roof, and then we will get that out to bid and get it under contract to get that built. But that was one of the, on the stack that he passed off when he left. So, but we got it going and we got it moving forward. And now the momentum, we can keep it going. But I hate to tell you guys, it's not going to be open by May. I would love it because we also do the farmer's market, and that means I have to get another porta potty and storage unit, but it would be really nice. But we will do our darndest to get it open during the market. There you go.
That would be great.
As long as it comes in budget. Now, that's the only thing, that's what we're working on now, so.
I'm not, I don't want to in any way sound like I'm complaining about it. I realize that a lot of these things just take time. Anytime you get all of the wheels of government trying to turn sort of in the same direction and unexpected things happening, that just drags everything out. The point I'm making is that as responsible stewards, if we're going to go out and ask hat in hand for more money from our constituents, they need to be able to see what's happening. So that won't come, if that were to be on the November ballot, then we'd have to put it on sometime sooner. I don't know what date that would be, but I would imagine at least 4 months, 88 days?
Before.
Okay.
So anyway, I just want to let you guys
Yeah.
know that it is moving forward now, and we'll try to keep it going.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? How much was the asbestos removal? Can you tell us?
$26,000 was the contract for the asbestos. And it's asbestos and mold and basically gutting the inside of the building. So now we just have to see if we can see what we can do about that roof, so. But we will keep the momentum going. I promise you that.
Yay.
Cool, cool.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Anything
Mayor.
else?
Nope.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that on Wednesday, the 19th, I attended the Central Sierra Broadband Conference up at Black Oak Casino. On Monday, February 24th, the Active Transportation Workshop, which was held for at the board chambers. It was actually city administrators there, and Colette was there. The state came up and gave us pointers on how to better score on grant opportunities for walking and biking in the community. The rural areas are notoriously, well, I don't know if notoriously is the right word, but it don't score as well for a multitude of reasons, but they gave us pointers on how to score better. And it was very well received by everyone that was there, including TCTC staff. And this morning I attended the Government Affairs Committee of the Chamber. And that's about it. I thought there was something else I was supposed to report on, but I can't remember. So with that, if there's no other reports, don't forget to vote tomorrow.
If I forgot.
No, everyone on TV is going to not hear it because it's going to be after the election, so.
Well, too bad. I had intended to include that, and then
Okay, well,
So,
go ahead.
being given the floor again, should anybody get this in time, please vote. Irrespective of who you choose to vote for, go out and do it. Thank you.
All right, and with that note, we will adjourn.